1 in 3 women across the world will suffer sexual violence in their lifetime. That grim statistic is the driving force behind the global internet phenomenon 1 billion rising. It's tried to get millions of people to take part in an unprecedented online awareness campaign on Valentine's Day. It's being backed by hundreds of celebrities. In a moment, we'll hear from the actor Thandie Newton. But first, a glimpse of the reality that women face every day. In South Africa, the country has been rocked by the horrific rape, mutilation and murder of a 17-year-old last weekend. Anyan Boysen was lured to this building site by a group of men and subjected to a brutal attack. Barely alive, she was taken to hospital and was able to identify her ex-boyfriend as one of her attackers before she died. It's being described as South Africa's Delhi moment, in reference to the rape and murder of a 23-year-old on a bus in the Indian capital last year. Thousands took to the streets to demand an end to violence against women. The politicians made promises that they will have to do more. Now, with a global day of action planned by the 1 billion campaign next Thursday, organisers are hoping that their action will spur the powers that be into acting. Thandie Newton has worked extensively with the 1 billion campaign, and earlier I asked her whether recent highly publicised incidents in Delhi and the Indian government's response had given the movement extra impetus.
The way it responded to the rape and death of Jyoti Singh and how the country is galvanised as a result of it. Yes, although, you know, we've been building up to 1 billion rising for a year now, so in a way what happened there in Delhi was just an example of what we are trying to raise awareness over.
South Africa, an appalling case even in this last few days.
Yes, that's right.
Are you looking across the world or specifically at the Indian subcontinent?
Across the world. The Congo, there's a picture here, was the place that really prompted Eve to create 1 billion rising, and Congo has been called the worst place in the, it is the worst place in the world to be a woman.
Presumably you have to have a programme of ways in which you think you can get delivery of change. I mean, for example, pressuring governments, talking to the United Nations. I mean, do you actually find a willing ear?
Well, interestingly, because violence against women is different in different parts of the world. So different parts of the world are responding to the campaign differently. 1 billion rising is a campaign which will allow for greater awareness of the wrongness of what's going on. I mean, if you think about South Africa, for example, girls there call rape sex. That's how much it's a part of their they're growing up as adolescents.
They literally see rape as a natural consequence of being introduced to sex.
Exactly. So the awareness, what will happen with 1 billion rising, hopefully, is it's also an education, a global education, that there are certain, rights that women are entitled to. And I think, because I really do think that the perception of how women perceive themselves after they've been violated is extraordinary. I mean, I feel personally, growing up and having been exposed to, I was violated as a young teen, and how I perceived myself was incredibly problematic, and that probably I became my own worst enemy of how I, expected to be treated.
What did happen to you?
In the industry that I'm in, I was a young woman, very naive, and was preyed on by directors.
What, literally in your teens?
Yes, I was exploited, and I think that it's a lot to do with how women were perceived, how women are perceived, and I just don't think that I didn't feel like I had any power because men were in the positions of authority.
I mean, do you, in a sense, equate that with that sense that women in South Africa think sex and rape are?
Well, I certainly wouldn't go so far as to think that, but I think there are degrees, yes.
You mean that in the cinema industry, you're a beautiful young actress, I've given you a good part.
Yeah.
The rest is music?
Well, again, the way you're brought up, what you're exposed to politically and socially will affect how you take that invitation. And if there had been a campaign like 1 billion rising, if I'd known a woman like Eve Ensler, if I'd been exposed to someone like me, for example, when I was a 16-year-old in film, I would have had a different attitude. And that is why I feel so passionately about allowing this to be as big and as bold and to reach as many young women and women of all ages as possible.
But if I take you to your probably most celebrated movie, Crash, you were sexually assaulted by a policeman in Crash.
Absolutely, yeah.
And very, very badly mishandled. How did you feel acting that for a start?
Oh, it was awful, especially as I had read the script. And in the script, it was only alluded to that there was molestation. I had actually read it as just he puts his hand up her skirt and that's enough. And to me, that was enough of a violation.
What effect do you think that has on a cinema audience? To what extent do you think it plays into a kind of culture in which this is fair game?
Well, what was very good about Crash is that it went behind the curtain. Yes, it's a racist police officer who is antagonising these people, but he is also the subject of trauma at the hands of his father, who had trauma. And I think that's one thing that I've found in the work that I've done, is that, you know, I'm fascinated by the perpetrators of the violence that we're talking about and why they're doing what they're doing. And there seems to be also an epidemic of trauma, male trauma, which they're trying to work out through destroying women. And it's a kind of species suicide.
So we can expect, after this particular demonstration, kind of stormtroopers who can be summoned when there is a major issue that you think goes to the core of what you're really protesting about.
1 Billion Rising will not go away. It's going to be a presence in all of our countries, all of our lives from now on.
Thandie Newton, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you so much.